G'day guys, how you going? So we're going to be looking at the abiotic and biotic factors as part of the ecology unit, looking at them within an ecosystem. So a biotic factor is a living factor in an ecosystem, and an abiotic factor is a non-living factor in an ecosystem. So if you had a look around this text, you'd see a few things that took me a couple of hours to draw. Things like your tree, your leaf, your kangaroo, or your snake down the bottom right there. All of these are living things, so they are biotic factors. In fact, most students, including yourself, are pretty good at spotting biotic factors in an ecosystem. So if I asked you to spot some living things here, straight away you'll be like your crane, your bears, your wolf, your bear, your deer, your fish, your raccoon, your squirrel. You'd spot the animals really quickly. And so animals as biotic factors, you usually do quite well at spotting them. Some of the really good ones might have also spotted things like, well, what about your plants, your trees, your grass, your bushes, your reeds? All of those things are living as well. So they would also be biotic factors. In fact, it's the plants that keep us all alive. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. Let's try and do this next one, which is looking at food availability. If you look at this bear, you'll see a very intense staring match with this fish, and that's because the fish is dinner. And so the bear, a biotic thing or a living organism, can eat the fish, another living organism, for dinner. And that two living things interacting is going to be a biotic interaction because it's a living factor. Also, coupled with this is something like this deer might sleep in the same or similar spot to the raccoon. So maybe there is competition between the two of them for space in which to sleep. So competition between organisms, between living things, can be a living or biotic factor as well. An important consideration in an ecosystem. Animals and plants are usually spotted and done really well, but things like food availability and things like competition are usually a little bit harder to spot, and something that I wanted to draw your attention to. Okay, so now let's try the trickier one. Let's try and see some abiotic or non-living factors in this ecosystem. And you've got things like water, right? Water is not alive, but it is important to the survival of these ecosystems. You've got things like this squirrel up here sucking in the oxygen like there's no tomorrow. That gas, oxygen, is an example of an abiotic or non-living factor. This bear's puffing out his carbon dioxide, right? Also an abiotic factor which is important to the survival of other things. And we've got this wolf over here just sunbaking, right? So sunlight or light intensity is a really important abiotic factor because it helps keep him warm, which is temperature, right? Temperature is another abiotic or non-living factor which is important to survival of these organisms. And one more that you might not have spot is under this ground there are minerals. There are lots of mineral ions which the trees need to take in order to keep themselves alive. So mineral ions are another non-living thing which is critically important to the survival of all of these living things, because if an abiotic factor keeps a plant alive, it keeps an animal alive. Without these factors, without abiotic and biotic factors, the whole ecosystem just crumbles, okay? So abiotic factors are usually harder to spot, but they are critically important to the survival of all the organisms in an ecosystem. I hope this helps, guys, and I'll catch you later.